Hello everyone and welcome to the very first episode of Pioneer of the Metaverse. My name is Sam and I'm excited to be your guide on this journey. Today we're going to explore two famous science fiction stories, Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson and Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. These stories imagine what our future could be like in a virtual world becomes as important as our everyday lives. But before we dive in, I want to ask you a big question. Are we living in a simulation? This might sound like a strange idea, but many smart people like philosopher Nick Bostrom and tech entrepreneur Elon Musk think it's possible. They suggest that if a future civilization has enough computing power, they could create a virtual universe so real that we wouldn't know we are inside of it. In other words, everything we see, hear, and feel could be part of a computer program. Why does this matter? Well, if we really are in a simulation, then our idea of reality might not be what we think it is. But at the same time, does it change how we live day to day? Not really. We still feel emotions like happiness, love, and sadness. We still have goals, hopes, and dreams. Maybe real or simulated doesn't matter as much as how we treat each other. This idea of simulations connects to the metaverse. The metaverse is a huge online world, like a massive video game, that many people believe will become part of our everyday life. Some think the metaverse will allow us to socialize, work, and even go to school in a virtual space. Both Snow Crash and Ready Player One show how these virtual worlds can shape our future, for better or for worse. So in this episode, we'll do two main things. We talk about Snow Crash and its vision of a future where corporations run everything and people escape into a virtual metaverse. And we explore Ready Player One, which shows a world where life is tough in the real world, so people spend most of their time in an online universe called OASIS. Stay with me. We have a lot of ground to cover, and it's going to be fun, surprising, and maybe a bit mind-blowing. By the end, I hope you'll see how these stories connect to our real lives and the technology we use every day. Let's spend a few more minutes talking about the simulation. Nick Bostrom wrote a famous paper called "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" He argued that at least one of these statements must be true. Civilizations almost never get advanced enough to run huge simulations of reality. Or civilizations might get advanced, but they decide not to create any ancestor simulations. So it means simulations of people who lived in the past. Or we are probably living in a simulation already. Elon Musk also talked about this. He thinks it's very likely we're inside a simulated universe. He points out how fast video games, graphics, and computer power have grown over the last few decades. He imagines that in the future we could create games so realistic that the character in the game wouldn't know they were in a game at all. It's a real conversation among philosophers, scientists, and tech leaders. However, most of us don't worry about it in daily life. We still have to do things like study for tests, go to work, or cook dinner. Even if we are in a simulation, our feelings and choices still matter to us. Why talk about this now? Because both Snow Crash and Ready Player One show people living in virtual worlds that feel almost as real as everyday life. This might help us to understand why the idea of being in a simulation feels so close to what's happening in technology right now. Let me introduce you to Snow Crash. That's a very interesting book, and that's the source of the metaverse. So what is Snow Crash? Do you know that? Now, let's jump into it. Snow Crash, written by Neal Stephenson, published in 1992. It gave us the first big picture of a metaverse. In fact, the word metaverse started with this book. Stephenson imagined a future where real life is rough, governments are weak, and giant corporations have most of the power. People are so tired of real life that they spend as much time as they can in the metaverse, a huge virtual reality world. In this metaverse, you can own virtual property, customize your avatar, and do amazing things that aren't possible in the real world. And who runs it? A world run by corporations. In Snow Crash, cities we know today, like Los Angeles, have broken up into smaller regions called burgclaves. These places are run by franchises or private companies. For example, you can live in a Burgclave run by the mafia, or by a big fast food chain, or by a super cool theme park brand. Each has its own rules and security. It's like many tiny countries next to each other. And why does this matter? It shows how powerful businesses can become. Instead of one big government, you have many business-controlled zones. Life is different in each zone. Some are strict, some are more relaxed, but none of them are really free. If you don't have money, you might end up outside these zones in wild, dangerous areas. Terrifying. So here it comes. Meet hero protagonist. He's the first man in the story. The hero of Snow Crash is named Hero Protagonist. Yes, that's his actual name. By day, Hiro delivers pizza for the mafia-owned pizza chain, the fastest pizza chain delivery in the future, by the way. By night, he's a skilled hacker, a sword fighter in the metaverse. When the book begins, Hiro is racing through the streets to deliver a pizza in under 30 minutes. If he's late, he could lose his job, or even worse. Right away, you can feel that life is dangerous. Everything happens fast, and mistakes can be very costly. And then he meets YT. Who's YT? Hiro meets a teenage girl named YT, which stands for Yours Truly. She's a courier who delivers messages on a high-tech skateboard with a magnetic harpoon. She's brave, clever, and knows how to survive on the chaotic roads. YT helps Hiro out of a tough situation, and they become partners. That's a very important part of the story. Together they uncover something very scary happening in the metaverse, a digital drug or virus called Snow Crash. So what's the Snow Crash exactly? Snow Crash first appears to be a piece of code that destroys your computer if you see it in the metaverse. But it's worse than that. It also affects your brain in the real world. Think of it like a virus that jumps from the virtual space into your mind. How is that even possible? Stephenson introduces a big idea. Language can be like a computer code. Long ago, he says, humans might have had a basic language that could program their brains directly. What an interesting idea, isn't it? In Snow Crash, if you see a certain pattern or symbol, it can hijack your mind. This virus is tied to ancient myths and gods like Enki from the old Sumerian civilization. That's the beauty of the book Snow Crash. It merges history and past. So the main questions are, who created Snow Crash? Why are they spreading it? Can Hiro and YT stop it before people lose free will? We'll find out. The rest of Snow Crash is a fast-paced adventure. We see Hiro hacking computers, systems inside the metaverse, fighting virtual sword duels, and running from powerful corporate thugs in the real world. YT zips around on her skateboard, gathering clues and outsmarting cops. They learn that stopping Snow Crash is not just about deleting some virus, it's about saving people's mind. Even though it's almost 30 years old, Snow Crash still feels modern. It predicted things like people spending huge amounts of time in online worlds, corporations becoming more powerful than governments. Neal Stephenson's Metaverse gave us a blueprint for how virtual worlds might look. Today, tech companies are trying to build similar experiences from VR games to online social platforms. Snow Crash is a warning. If we let businesses or hackers control our virtual reality, we might lose our freedom in ways we don't expect. Now, let's talk about another famous book, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, published in 2011. It became so popular that Steven Spielberg turned it into a movie. While Snow Crash is a bit dark and focused on hacking, Ready Player One is more about pop culture, gaming, and a giant treasure hunt in a virtual world. In Ready Player One, the year is 2045, and the real world is in a bad shape. pollution is severe. There's an energy crisis. Many people are poor and live in crowded, unsafe areas called the stacks. Everyone escaped this sad reality by logging into the OASIS, a massive online metaverse that's part video game, part social network, and part virtual classroom. So, let's meet Parzival. Our main character is Wade Watts, a teenager who lives in the stacks. He doesn't have cool clothes or high-end gear, but he's extremely smart and very good at understanding 1980s pop culture, old video games, movies and music and so on. Why 1980s? Because the creator of the OASIS, James Halliday, loved that era. I do as well. It was a great time back then. Halliday's big surprise: before he died, Halliday left a secret Easter egg hidden somewhere in the OASIS. Whoever finds it will win his entire fortune, worth billions, and control the OASIS itself. This is like finding a golden ticket in a giant digital universe. The hunt for the Easter egg. Finding Halliday's Easter egg is not easy. It involves solving riddles, completing challenges, and discovering hidden keys. All these challenges tie back to 80s movies, arcade games, TV shows, and music. For years, nobody found anything. Then Wade suddenly solves the first puzzle. Overnight, he becomes famous. His avatar Parzival shows up on a big scoreboard for everyone to see. But this also makes Wade a target. A huge company called IOI wants to take over the OASIS. If IOI wins, they plan to fill the OASIS with ads and charge people a lot of money just to log in. They also don't mind cheating or even killing to get what they want. Here we got the friends and the allies. Wade can't do this alone, so he teams up, sometimes with other Gunters. Gunter stands for egg hunters. Egg, his best friend in the OASIS. Artemis, a famous and clever female Gunter who's very skilled. Shudo and Daito, two Gunters who come from a different part of the world. They sometimes work together, sometimes compete, but share a common goal: stop IOI and keep the OASIS free for everyone. The OASIS is a giant metaverse with countless planets. Some planets look like fantasy worlds, full of elves and dragons. Others look like futuristic cities with flying cars. There's even a planet where you can recreate old movies scene by scene. The possibilities are endless, limited only by your imagination. Wade's challenges often require him to beat a classic arcade game or act out every line of a famous 80s movie. If you love older pop culture, reading or watching Ready Player One feels like a fun trip down memory lane. But even if you don't know 80s references, the story is exciting because it's about teamwork, friendship, standing up to a powerful enemy. As Wade gets closer to finding the final key, IOI steps up its real-life attacks. They can track people's identities and do terrible things to them in the physical world. This shows how dangerous it can be when a virtual game has huge real-world power. If one company or person controls the OASIS, they basically control the global economy and everyone's social life. Ready Player One is not just a fun story about video games. It also shows us hope and determination. Even if you start with very little knowledge and passion can help you succeed. The power of virtual worlds. People use the OASIS to learn, make friends, fall in love, and even escape poverty. The danger of corporate control. If one group rules a big virtual space, they could crush freedom and creativity. The OASIS is amazing, but it can make people ignore real-world problems. If the real world is falling apart, maybe we should fix instead of hiding in a game. Now, let's compare these two books. Both imagine virtual worlds that are almost as important as everyday life, but they approach these worlds in different ways. First, the tone and style: Snow Crash, darker, more violent, with lots of satire about big companies and hacking. Ready Player One, lighter in tone, full of fun references and focused on a massive treasure hunt. You might be wondering, how do these fictional stories connect to what's really happening today? Well, consider, real metaverse projects. Companies like Meta, previous Facebook, Microsoft, and many startups are investing billions in creating virtual platforms. Virtual events. We already have virtual concerts and gathering in games like Fortnite and Roblox. Millions of players join there every day. Digital economies. People are buying and selling virtual items using cryptocurrencies and NFTs to own digital land or art. Remote work. Some businesses have virtual offices where employees use avatars to meet. Will only the rich have fancy VR gear, creating more inequality? Should governments limit how powerful companies can become in the metaverse? Snow Crash and Ready Player One both warned us about these issues. They remind us that technology is a tool. It can do great things or it can be used for control. It depends on who holds the power and what rules we set. We have talked about two big sci-fi stories and how they connect to real life. In future episodes of Pioneer of the Metaverse, we'll dive into everything happening around in the metaverse. We'll also interview experts who are building or studying the metaverse right now. We'll ask them how we can make these virtual spaces fair and fun. We will look into AI and of course blockchain and crypto will be discussed, especially what new business opportunities will arise in the metaverse. Let me share my final thoughts. As we wrap up, let's remember the big question we started with. Are we living in a simulation? We don't know for sure, but it reminds us that what we call reality might be more flexible than we think. Whether or not our universe is a computer program, we can still shape our future by the choices we make today, right? Snow Crash and Ready Player One both show us that virtual worlds can be exciting, dangerous, freeing, and profitable, all at the same time. They also teach us to be careful about who controls these spaces. If a giant corporation owns the metaverse, will we lose our digital freedom? So here are some final points to keep in mind. Technology can be used to connect people or divide them. Virtual reality can help us to learn, play, and meet new friends, but it should not replace fixing real-world problems. We have a say in how the metaverse develops by choosing whether we spend our money, time, and attention. Thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of Pioneer of the Metaverse. I hope you enjoyed exploring these stories and thinking about what they mean for us. If you like this discussion, stay tuned for the future episodes where we'll dive even deeper into the metaverse, its history, and its potential. Remember, we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. Let's create a future where technology helps everyone, not just a few. Whether we are in a simulation or not, we can decide what kind of world we want to live in. Real, virtual, or both? I'm Sam and this was Pioneer of the Metaverse. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you enjoyed today's episode or found it inspiring, please share it with your friends, family, and anyone curious about the future of the metaverse. Together we can grow this community and spark more exciting conversations. I can't wait to continue our journey next time. Take care, stay curious, I'll see you soon.